Howdy. Just thought I'd try to go over the anatomy of an automobile, seems how I am a doctor. So I just thought I'd point out a few things on the car so that you know what they are, and when someone tells you, oh, you need this or that, or a flux capacitor, you're like, hey, wait a minute, these don't have flux capacitors. You know, stuff like that. So, and I still haven't decided on the meta glasses yet, which ones. So maybe if you all could give me some suggestions on which ones you found work best. But anyway, here we go. So these are your coils. They produce the spark that you need for the spark plug that's at the other end of this. It's down inside the cylinder. Whenever this valve cover starts leaking oil, the oil will go down inside that hole, and it'll of course damage your coil and cause spark problems and all kinds of stuff. So having a valve cover that's not leaking is important. This is the intake. Intakes are usually plastic because they just draw air in, so they can be plastic. Back here, of course, is the exhaust. It has to be metal because that's where your heat is at. So as you can see, this is in the front of the car. So if you get hit in the front, 9 times out of 10, in this setup, this will break. And there's many a times where I've had to, as a body man, make sure that this was not broken, because it will cause all sorts of problems. On to the air cleaner. This hose here on a Honda, older Honda, it's prone to cracking. That's just a Honda feature. But this just enables the air to go from your filter. It filters the air that goes into the engine. This is going to be your throttle body that has the flap that all it does is allow air in. It's not like the old school where it just allows air to go through. And these injectors, which are here and on the fuel rail, provide the fuel. This provides the spark. All it needs is air intake. And that's what this does. This is the MAF sensor, mass airflow. And of course it is right here where the air cleaner is, where the air comes in, because it's measuring how much air is coming into the engine. When this is dirty and it's not calculating enough air, then you'll have problems with acceleration, misfires, all sorts of things, because this is reading incorrectly. There's a can of spray that you can buy that cleans only these. It's called MAF sensor cleaner. This here be the battery. Normally your larger post is always positive. The smaller one is negative. Anytime you change the battery, you should always clean this terminal here. Get the corrosion off of it. If you put a new battery in, you don't have to usually worry about cleaning the post. But you definitely need to clean the terminal, both of them. The protectant that I excuse me, the protectant that I use the most is it's like a red spray can. It's like a wax, because it doesn't interfere with the electric current. There are some dielectric grease out there that actually interrupts the current that can get through these connectors, so don't use it. This is the best one because it doesn't allow the water to penetrate down inside and corrode the connection. You can buy it at O'Reilly. Let me see. And that's it there. Moving on to the brake cylinder. This is the master. Anytime you have this, there is a master cylinder somewhere. And this one is way over here. That's the master cylinder. There's another cylinder here that holds fluid, but this is your main one supplied by a tube. Hardly any of them are made that way, so don't worry. All right, so, but every canister is the same, basically. It'll have, and it's right there on the side, a minimum and a maximum. And these oil changing places should not fool with that fluid. That's all there is to it. Because it is designed so that as your brake pads wear down, this level goes down. And eventually it gets to the point where, and of course there's probably a sensor back there, it gets to the sensor and the sensor says, hey, you need brakes. But if someone refills this because they say that it's low, oh no, it's low, then that function will be null and void. And that's why they should never put fluid in this. Now, if this goes completely empty, that's when you know you have a problem. But if it never goes empty, but it keeps going low, that's normal. It's taking up the space for your pads weighing down. And it tells you that your pads are low. Like I say, every canister has a max and a minimum. And let's say it's down to the minimum mark. That's where you'd want to go and check your pads. See if it's the fronts that are completely wore out, which normally the front ones wear out quicker than the back ones because they work harder. They're the ones that do the most amount of braking. So that's a way to tell where your brakes are at without putting your eyeball on them. Check and see where that level is, max, between max and minimum. This one's kind of easy as to where the oil goes, but this is not always marked. It is normally on top of your valve cover because that's where you want the oil to enter, is directly into the engine. Now this one is 0W20. I would not use that stuff. It's just too thin. And if you do the research on it, they say the same thing. It's not good for the engine. It doesn't give you longevity. They say 10W30 is the best, but you're not going to get very good gas mileage. So 5W30 is usually just right on any engine, for the most part. The information needed to know which parts to replace at what time is in your owner's manual. If you don't have an owner's manual, especially nowadays, you can get them online anywhere. But it'll tell you, say for instance, spark plugs. It'll tell you either 75,000 miles, 100,000 miles. Definitely pay attention to that. Because what happens is the spark decreases. It doesn't burn as much of the fuel as it should, and it destroys your catalytic converters and O2 sensors. So they put that information in the owner's manual for a reason, and it's a good idea to pay attention to it. As far as your fuses, except on Ford, on the back side of the cap, you'll find the designation as to what the fuse is, which makes logical sense. It's too bad Ford can't get the idea, but anyway, each fuse, of course, goes to something, and like the last person just experienced, that you cannot put a wire wherever you feel like it. You, on each one of these fuses, each side, because there's a pin here and there's a pin there, that enables you to be able to check it. So right here and right there are the two pins that enable you to check this fuse to see if it's any good. Now, they don't recommend doing that too often or too long because you're actually grounding the other side of the fuse. But if this side is always positive, even with the fuse out, you do not want to put any wire on that whatsoever. Because now, if that particular wire shorts out, you're shorting out whatever's at the other end of this fuse. Which is exactly what the last customer did. He shorted out his entire ECM and BCM. Just one tiny little wire on the wrong side of the fuse. For one, he didn't check to see what that fuse was all about, where it goes, because each one of these are designated for something. So check and see where it goes first, and don't put it on the lead side of the fuse, because they do have these fuse injectors, so to speak, that have the wire sticking out of it so you can use it as such. but make sure your wire is on the non-illuminated side of that fuse, or else you'll blow out whatever component is on the other end of this fuse. These are relays. They're normally for your starter and fan, stuff like that. Stuff that takes a lot of current, but very little current to actually turn it on from the computer. So those are all their relays. These are bigger fuses that the only thing you can do is look down inside there to see if it's blown. They normally don't blow out. If they do, you got a serious problem. So as an example, when you have your test light, you put it on the negative. This one happens to be right here. Or on the battery negative. And then on this fuse is out. That's our positive side, our positive lead. Okay, fuse is out. The opposite lead on the other side, nothing. So whatever wire that you want to add, which again, do your research and see what you're applying more current to. Generally, you try to do the ones that are for radio, accessories, cigarette lighter, stuff like that. So if you're going to put that fuse in that has a wire on it, make sure the wire is on this side where there's no electricity, where there's no current. Because then, if that shorts out, it takes out the fuse, which is exactly what it's supposed to do. But if you put it on this side, whatever shorts out, it's going to short out whatever is on there, on that fuse. Makes sense, right? So be sure and put it on the non-electrified side. The belt, which is normally called the serpentine belt, drive belt, things like that kind of belt. When you look at them, look at the surface that has the ribs and make sure there's no cracks. If there's cracks, then it's time to replace it. Same thing with your timing belt, which is behind a cover in the front. Now, if it has a plastic cover on the front, generally that means that it is a belt, a rubber belt. The ones like this, where there's no plastic cover, is generally a chain, and you don't really have to worry about them that much. Your Ford F-150s, those you have to worry about because it is a chain, yes, but the plastic guides and such are the ones that break, and that's what tears up those engines. It's a good engine except for them plastic guides. So that's the belt. If you see cracks on it, be sure and change her out. Also, once you get the belt off, you want to check and make sure all your components are good. This would be an idler, because that's all it does. It just sits there and allows this to turn. The bearings inside of them go bad. You could have up to 4 of those. All it does is guide the belt. Lets it go to the next component, like the AC down there or the water pump, so on and so forth. So you want to check those and make sure the bearings are good on them. This is part of your air conditioning. This is a fitting. And it's supposed to be a cap on there. I don't know why mechanics think that cap is totally unnecessary, because every time I get one of these cars from some other mechanic, that is missing. I kind of understand why they do it, because it enables them to have repeat work, because normally these leak. Over time they start leaking. So when the mechanic leaves the cap off, let's say a month, 2 months later, all of a sudden your AC is not working. You can't blame it on him because 2 months have gone by. Oh, you've had AC for 2 months. You know, couldn't have been me. That's how they do it. They leave the cap off. It sits there and lets out the Freon extremely slowly. But by the time 2 months go by, there's not enough Freon to hit the compressor. So these caps should be on. If you find your cap off, they sell, of course, AC caps for your specific application. You can get a cap on it. But that cap is important. And yes, there will be guys that say that cap doesn't do anything. And it's not supposed to hold that pressure. But it does. It'll hold it back enough to, get you a few more years out of it. Now, the right way, of course, is to replace it. Yes, and the other reason is for dirt and water and stuff that don't get down inside there, and then you can't use the valve. And when all that dirt is inside of there and someone goes and puts their gauges on there, all that dirt goes into the system, pushes it right in. So another reason why that needs to be capped and clean. You will always find two of them. There's one there and there's one here, and it does say high on it. The bigger cap is the high side. The smaller one is the low side. And back in the day, R12 was just the opposite. The high side was small, the low side was big. So now it's the opposite. But you always find two of them. Make sure the cap is on it. Anytime you see a cap, generally you can look at the cap and it'll tell you exactly what it's for. That one's power steering. And anytime power steering has a minimum or a maximum level on the canister, usually right there, do not go farther than the maximum, because the fluid not only expands when it gets hot, it also expands when it's working, because it's a hydraulic system. So it needs that space to expand and contract. If you overfill it, it'll empty this thing completely out, because it'll just keep pushing it out of the top of the cap. So you don't want to, when it says max, keep it at max. And again, you want to go to that one. That one's washer fluid. That's for your windshield. This one here, coolant. Same thing. They always have a maximum and minimum right there in the front. F and L. Don't overfill this one either, because it's the same principle. The antifreeze expands because it gets hot, and it'll flow itself back in here while you're driving and as it heats up. But then when you shut your car off, it sucks it right back into the radiator. So if this is overfilled, you're going to constantly be emptying your radiator, because it has to have room for expansion. It expands and it comes back down. It comes in and out of the radiator through a suction. So it's important to keep that at its proper level as well. Of course, everybody knows a dipstick. I'm sure everyone knows a dipstick in their life, probably. But anyway, this is the dipstick for the oil. And written on the dipstick, generally, is everything you need to know. This one, yes, it's written on it. Let's see if I can capture it somehow. But it's generally written on there where your lines are, where the oil level needs to be. Sometimes it'll tell you what type it is. So anywho, when you check your oil, the engine needs to be at least sat for an hour. So if you're driving and you want to check your oil, let it sit for an hour, because all the oil has to go back down into the oil pan. The oil pump pumps it to the top of the engine so it can lubricate the top of the engine. Well, if you check it, the oil level, as soon as you shut it off, all that oil is still going to be at the top, and so you're not going to get a good reading. So if you let it sit for an hour, or if you just check it in the morning, make sure the car is level. The car has to be level. The engine off. Pull the dipstick out. Wipe it off. Make sure to wipe it off. I'm going to use my pants. Get it nice and clean. And then jam it back in there. All the way down. Yank it back out. And that's where you check it. That's where the level actually is. And this one looks like it is on the money. So it's good. Because you've got two dots there. And it wants you to be at the top dot. Now, another reason for not overfilling this as well is because the oil will slap against the what they call the crank, and it has all the pistons in it. Pistons are going up and down, so if they're slapping into oil at the bottom, it takes that oil and makes a whole bunch of bubbles out of it. It creates a whole bunch of bubbles that go through the entire system. Air does not lubricate, so it ends up destroying the engine because there's more air in the oil because it's aerated than there is the actual oil. So that's why you always want to keep your oil level where it's supposed to be. There are some engines that you can get away with a little bit over, but very few. So just keep that at the proper level. On a front wheel drive car, the transmission is always going to be on the opposite side of where your belt is. It's down inside there. They don't always have a dipstick. This one does. The newer ones do not. That's a tricky little one to check. So that usually has to be done by a mechanic. If this is a rear wheel drive vehicle, then your transmission is going to be back there. If it's an all-wheel drive, you may have a transmission that way and then a drive shaft going back that way off of another component. So it's a big mess. That's why they're more expensive. This here be the radiator cap, and yes, it is broken. So it's a good idea to check that occasionally. Make sure it hasn't fallen apart like that, because if that's broken, then it doesn't allow the antifreeze to go back and forth, and it'll end up building up too much pressure, and it'll push it right out of the radiator. Another reason why your radiator might be empty. So check your radiator cap. When filling this up, there's always a procedure, almost always, to getting all the air out. So check your owner's manual or Google the steps needed for that. If your engine is making a lot of noise when it's idling, it might be a motor mount. This motor mounts are basically rubber. They take away all the vibration from the engine so that you don't hear it inside the car. So if you're hearing your engine and it feels, like it's vibrating, you can feel every combustion, so to speak, it's probably because these rubber motor mounts have gotten too hard. They're no longer soft rubber, it's super hard. Or if you hear a clunk whenever you have it in gear and you step on the gas and you hear a clunk, that's probably their motor mount broken. You have one on this one, you have one here at the front or the side, the right side. There's one in the rear, there's usually one in the front, and there's one on the left side over there. So there's usually one here, over there on the right, left, over here on the right, and one in the back, but not always. But if you're feeling the vibration of the engine through the vehicle, then it's more likely your motor mounts. A lot of the newer cars now are going with a CVT transmission, constant velocity. It's just a metal band that tightens up as you go faster. And especially on those, I recommend changing the oil, just drain and fill, no filter, every 40,000 miles. Because those CVT transmissions work a lot. So they end up with a lot of debris inside of them, and that debris is what destroys the engine or the transmission. So if you replace that fluid and get that debris out of there, the transmission lasts a whole lot longer. Especially if you're driving a Nissan, you definitely want to change it out every 30 to 40,000 miles. No ifs, ands, or buts. So maybe next time we could go over airbags and what they do, what they don't do, and how dangerous they are or not. But for now, whether you're walking or flying or even swimming, happy trails. Please like and subscribe. Appreciate your comments as well. Hasta luego. See ya.